Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom Into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Ian Blackburn, and I want to thank you very, very much for making a little time for us. We're going to talk a little fantastic wine this evening. You know, we move the topicality around every Wednesday night. You can see our calendar at zoomintowine.com. We have a really, really active calendar being pushed out for a number of months. We will get back to live events at some point, but at the current moment, we're enjoying tasting at the privacy and safety of our own home. And it's been a wild couple of years doing these Zooms, but I know we've got some familiar faces on the Zoom with us tonight, and I want to thank you all very, very much for joining me, keeping me company, and giving us something to do. We have a wonderful lineup of wines, and the way I'm going to do it tonight, I just want to go in and share the event with you as I talk this through. But I've put together 5 incredible wines that kind of represent Chardonnay of the world. And there's different ways we could do this, but I've decided to kind of be fun to have you try the wines in the order 1 through 5 if you've got the kit, and if you don't, it's okay. I'm going to go through the different nuances of each of the wines, but I don't want to tell you what each wine is quite yet. I would love for you to try the wines and to kind of taste them and see if you can guess what they are and to pick up on some of the nuances. I think it really builds different tasting ability when you are told what you're tasting versus you sensing it for yourself and trying to figure it out. And quite honestly, that's the whole wonderful nature of blind tasting. Now, this isn't quite blind because you know which 5 wines they are, and if you're on our Zoom tonight, I'm just pasting the page right into the box, the chat box, so that everybody can see the list of the wines and just kind of think about them. But I want to take you through this journey and have you taste these wines and get a little flesh. We will reveal them, of course, but I just want you to be able to experience them on your own, and then I'll cover them in a little bit. And if you know that which wine is which, just hold it to yourself for a little while. And some of this will make a little bit more sense as we go throughout the evening. But let me go right into our PowerPoint and kind of share with you a little bit about each wine. Now, one of the wines we're going to taste tonight, quite frankly, is really been named as one of the best Chardonnay producers in the state of California. James Suckling gave it an enormous 98-point score. And this is a really great brand to learn about, to maybe potentially visit in the Napa Valley. This has got a really special brand story. The name is Hyde de Villaine. In fact, I'm going to go back a slide and just let you look at the label for a second. Hyde de Villaine, that's the Hyde family. They own a very important vineyard in Carneros. And de Villaine, where do we know de Villaine? Well, they are one of the owners of Domaine Romanée-Conti in Burgundy. And so they created a partnership to create some very special wines in the Napa Valley. Now, up until now, they have purposely avoided making Pinot Noir to potentially have that conflict of, old world versus new, which one's better. They do make a number of different wines, some Syrah, Merlot, some Cabernet, and maybe they have started making Pinot now too, but it was on purpose that they avoided the Pinot Noir button because of the relationship with Domaine Romanée-Conti. But, Domaine Romanée-Conti makes some pretty damn good Chardonnay too. So Chardonnay has always been quite exceptional. There really isn't a relationship between the winemaking staff that's here in California and the winemaking staff that's in Burgundy. So just more of a family diversification. Mrs. de Villain is actually born in Pasadena, so she's got a lot of California roots, and then her husband is definitely a Burgundian. Now, this particular wine comes from some of the Hyde holdings and the partnership with the brand, and of course Napa Valley is so distinctive, being in Northern California, on top of the San Pablo Bay, benefiting from this wonderful diurnal range, as well as the almost this kind of big lung that is the Napa Valley. As it warms up, it pushes the cold air out, and as that sun goes down, that coolness returns and it sucks the fog back in. It's this amazing mechanism, and it's really quite apparent when you're in the Napa Valley to be able to see it, feel it. You certainly can feel the cool nights even on a warm day, and it's quite a special appellation for all of those reasons. And there is really a kind of a division that started about 10-15 years ago, when Napa Valley really started to identify that, hey, Cabernet is our calling card, and let's make Cabernet our priority. If you went back 40 years, 50 years, they grew everything in the Napa Valley, and you can pay a lot of bills with a $200 bottle of Cabernet. It's really hard to pay a lot of bills with a $22 bottle of late harvest Gewürztraminer. So they got away from the odds and ends and the other stuff that they used to grow, Rieslings and Sylvaners and just really, we used to be a very sweet wine market, and they dried up and got more and more advanced, and the wines of the Napa Valley today are really, really important. They still maintain a very small fingerprint in our California wine world as far as volume. You're looking at between 3 and 5% of the total wine made in California says Napa Valley on the label. So it is a very small production, and people do think, when I ask people, how much wine do you think is made in the Napa Valley? The answer is often 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of California's wines coming from the Napa Valley. And that's only for a number of reasons. That back in the day, you used to be able to grow your grapes in Sonoma and truck them over to the Napa Valley and turn it into Napa Valley wine. And that's not the way it's done anymore. Everybody's got to stand on their own, and you got Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, Lodi, Monterey, all different parts of California making some great wine. And so this wine that we're showing off today comes from some really great older vineyards that have been professionally grown for quality. And that's a big differential. There are volume wine vineyards, and there are quality vineyards, and they do not look or act alike. You don't just turn on a switch and all of a sudden go from making quantity to quality. Really focus on quality here. Hyde de Villain sourcing some of the best fruit in the Napa Valley with their amazing holdings. Another look at the vineyard. Vine age 27 to 40 years of age. In the life of a vine, the first 10 years can be, the wines can be fun and fruity, but they don't really attain the wisdom that older vines can attain with deeper penetration into the soils and into the rock and into the different layers of earth. The clones that they're using here of Chardonnay, Old Wente, and Clara. And then, we talk about exposure or exposition. Which way is the sun going, the wind coming, is it morning sun, afternoon sun? Is it flat? Is it hillside? Is it terraced? This vineyard allows them to produce about 2,275 cases. That is a teeny amount in the wine world. And, some of the top wineries are in the millions of cases in production. So fairly small production. But I bet their total production as a brand is under 10,000 cases. this being an important wine for them, but they do make a number of different red wines as well, and they do make a couple of different types of Chardonnay as well. We've got 20% new French oak, and that is going to be evident when you taste this wine in the smell of the wine, the smell of vanilla, and potentially a little bit of that texture that comes from it as well. 14 months bottling in November 2019. This was unfined and unfiltered. I'm going to now check in with our audience, see if you got a little wine in your glass. Did everybody get a chance to try wine number 1 yet? Little hint.
Yes.
Little hint, wine number 1 was not the Hyde de Villaine. So what is it? Terrence, how you doing, buddy? I can see you, but I can't hear you yet. I'm gonna have you unmute there.
I have to say that I cheated because I was having this beautiful shrimp and pasta meal tonight.
Okay.
And I drank 1 and 2, and I don't think either 1 or 2. In fact, I'm sure 1 or 2 is not from Hyde Vineyards. I love that vineyard. Albert makes bottles some juice from Hyde. So I don't know. My mind kept telling me the number 1 was number 1.
What did you detect in number 1? Instead of trying to guess which one it is, just share what you're sensing.
I got I like the steeliness to it.
Yeah, that's good.
And then the kind of rocky or steely flavor profile that came through on it. I kind of the characteristics of a Burgundy Chardonnay.
Yeah, so 2 of our wines tonight are from Burgundy, so there's a very good likelihood that one of those is in glass number 1, and we'll reveal that in just a little while. But just get your kind of nose going on there. Just hear what Terrence was talking about, that smell, that there isn't it doesn't poke you in the nose and say, you know, this was from a wood barrel. There's a lot of earth here. You can smell that stoniness and maybe even a little bit of a saltiness in this first wine.
Yeah, the minerality is pretty nice.
All right, let's just go right into our second wine, and we'll, like I said, I'm going to reveal all these wines in a minute. But let's just capture a little bit more information and let you taste and explore and build up your own opinion. And even if I tell you the wine's got some amazing press, doesn't mean you have to like it. One of the wines tonight is going to be from Patagonia. Real excited. I will be honest, sometimes I put these tastings together because I want a good excuse to taste some of these wines. You know, a wine like this, it comes out big score, small production. You don't necessarily get to meet with the vendor and taste these wines. You have to pull the cork and open your own bottle. And so, you know, I do depend on some of the critics, but sometimes I do get to meet with the vendors. Sometimes I just know the wine's going to be so amazing that I'll take the small amount that I'm able to buy. I was only given an opportunity to buy about 24 bottles of this wine. This wine comes from Patagonia, which is not the first place you think of for wine, period. But there were actually vines planted there close to 100 years ago. Of course, we're talking about southern Argentina, very close to the southern tip of the world, if you wish, at least South America, and it's definitely more of a wooded forest. And let's take a look at where we're at. So I have been personally to Argentina a couple of times, but I've always been to northern Argentina, namely Salta and Mendoza. Hung out each time you have to go in and out of Buenos Aires. Well, Patagonia is certainly on the list of places I want to go, and this winery gives me a wine reason to go there. So we're intending to take a trip to Argentina in July if anybody wants to go. You can sign up at winela.com. That's where all the trips are located, and just sign up on the interest list if you want to find out more about our trips. So, Argentina really is an amazing spot for a lot of people, in a lot of people's mind, for value in wine, and there's such a culture there, and there's a lot of history. But wine isn't exactly part of the history. It's been only since the early 1990s that wine really became a more important part of their economy, and it has grown up in a hurry. It went from being an idea to being quite prolific, and there are now vineyards throughout Argentina, and so we're down in the southern part of Argentina in Patagonia, and the brand is called Chakra, and this is a really new brand, although it's been in the process of becoming a brand since 2004. I've got I think a little video here. Let me see what happens when I hit this one. Oh yeah, I'm going to get an interview with the gentleman who owns this wine brand, and what I'm going to do is give each of you this slideshow at the end of the event today, and you can go back and watch the entire interview if you haven't seen it. But I got to interview Piero Incisa, and his father is he is the grandson, I'm sorry, of the brand that is Sassicaia. And so he decided long ago that he didn't want to be under the kind of the thumb of the family and the family rules and the family this and that. So he went out and got multiple degrees, worked in the wineries all over the world. He actually went to school here in LA where I met him. He was going to Pepperdine, and he's quite well-traveled, well-cultured, very smart and dynamic businessman. And he brought his prowess to Patagonia after a fluke accident. He tasted a wine from there and saw some really innate qualities and decided to check it out because he was looking for some place that he could make a difference. And it would be easy for him to fold it up and to build a winery right next to Sassicaia and Tuscany and all that stuff. But he just really wanted to escape that, paternistic family thing. So he moved away and found something on the other side of the planet. And he found some really old vines, and I'll stop this video now and let you guys come back to it a little bit later, but he is talking the entire distance through that video about his brand. And he had a couple of fantastic opportunities here. First of all, the vineyard had or the place that he bought had vines 80 years ago, and some of the vine material, this ancient vine material, was able to be restored. So he's got blocks of vineyard with 80-year-old vines. And then he brought in some experts, including a friend of his, Jean-Marc Rouleau. And if you're a Burgundy collector, you know the name Rouleau, because this guy makes world-class white wines that no one can get their hands on. As a wine shop, I don't have a chance of getting any allocation on these wines that are all spoken for and allocated to businesses that have been around for a long, long time. And they sell for hundreds, potentially thousands of dollars a bottle on release. So it's quite a master of white wine and Burgundy. So Jean-Marc comes down and partners with him. He's not hired as a winemaker. He partners with Piero Incisa and decides, to make the white wines. That's his specialty, and that's what he wants to do. So they got involved. The property is 100% biodynamic, 100% certified organic, and they're really going for it. And the wine that we're going to taste tonight is called Manquis, and that is one of the 5. Stop and share that again. And it has older use of wood. So the wood barrels are not very impactful. They don't want to have a big fingerprint from the wood barrel. They're going to have a little bit of oxidation from the wood barrel, but they've got this really nice, cooler climate, southern part of the world. So you're looking at a March harvest, and they're doing things in a very classic, say, Burgundian way, and under the direction of a couple of European minds. So lots of European mentality going in to this beautiful, elegant, subtle, very restrained is how I would describe the nose. It's super subtle, and yet if you can spend some time with it in the glass, it keeps kind of opening doors and showing you how complex the wine is and how daft this winemaking is. They know how to push the levers, and it's such a small production that they're able to do things that really wise, talented winemakers can do with amazing equipment and facilities, which is what they've built. So all of that is adding together to make a really special wine. One of the wines that we're going to try tonight is a Chablis, and if you have ever tasted with me in person, very good likelihood we've opened a bottle of Chablis together. It's one of my favorite wines on the planet. You can pay little, and I would consider this a fairly affordable, low-priced Chablis. It is an old vine, or Vieille Vigne Chablis, and it just carries Chablis appellation. Chablis is, and you can tell on the label, the little oyster shell. Chablis was discovered by the monks about 1,000 years ago as this place where the soils were really populated by oyster-like fossils. Something happened with the tectonic plates that really created these wine zones in Burgundy. And literally the slopes of gold, the Côte d'Or, was formed by the earth plates moving and creating this hill that was actually quite tall, and they came crashing down, and they exposed rings of the earth's crust. And that's what was a determining factor and why they decided that the slope was the right place to plant the best grapes. And they used that knowledge. The monks farmed for hundreds, maybe 1,000 years, and they kept sharing information. Well, they discovered this region a little bit north of Côte d'Or in the Chablis area, and they saw this collection of soils and slopes, and it's such a unique zone. They don't even grow any red grape varieties there. It's all Chardonnay, 100%. No little blends, no little secret grapes planted anywhere. It's Chardonnay, and it's only telling you the story of these Cameroonian soils, the soils of oyster shells, and it really creates a unique presentation for Chardonnay. It's very linear, very clean, very pretty. Sorry, my slideshow's now showing me the slides I didn't get to show you at Chakra. A couple more there we go. Okay, so now we're back into this Chablis. As you can see, the map here, here's the we're down as far as south as the Rhone. Then you got Beaujolais, you got Macon. You've got the wines that come in like the Côte de Chalonnaise. That's this zone right here. And then you've got Beaune, Côte de Beaune, and Côte de Nuits. This is the slopes of gold right here, and this is where the really special singular concept came from. You come way out here, and it was just close enough that the Burgundians allowed it to be part of their zone, and I'm sure that was very tribal, and that the monks saw the opportunity to plant here in this special soil type, different than any other part of Burgundy. This Cameroonian deposit, this collection, could only be formed from the plates moving and kind of slanting, and all this matter just went in this one direction and created this really unique soil collection. Cameroonian limestone. And limestone's all over the world because the world used to be covered with water, and as it evaporated, it left all this sea particles and shells and sea deposits, and that is what makes limestone. I'm going to play this and talk on top of it if it lets me. Man, my slideshow is really not behaving in the last couple episodes. I don't know if Zoom upset somebody, but it's just bouncing. But this is one of my favorite videos to play at any point in time. It's a few minutes long. I'd love for you guys to watch it with me.
The Chablis wine growing region is located in France in the north of the Bourgogne region in the Yonne department between Paris and Beaune. Its story began 150 million years ago when the region was covered by the sea. It was then that the unique Kimmeridgian soil of the Chablis region was laid down, recognizable by the tiny oyster fossils it contains. Vines were first introduced in Chablis by the Romans between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. From the 12th century onwards, Cistercian monks of the Abbey of Pontigny, the second of the 4 daughter houses of the Citeaux Abbey, ensured the region prospered. Thanks to its proximity to Paris, accessible by the Yonne River from the town of Auxerre, Chablis wines were soon a regular feature on the tables of the kings of France, and went on to conquer Europe, soon establishing a global reputation. Chablis wines are simple. They're made from a single varietal, the Chardonnay grape. They are always white, and they come in 4 appellations. Petit Chablis, with almost 1,000 hectares planted on the plateaus. Chablis, covering the biggest surface area, with 3,500 hectares. Chablis Premier Cru, on favorable slopes, with around 800 hectares. And lastly, Chablis Grand Cru, grown on one single hill, with the very best orientation, and covering just 100 hectares. The Chablis region is crossed from south to north by the river Serein, which flows into the Yonne. The river and its tributaries have carved out valleys and hills, and the climat of the Chablis region sit on either side, on these slopes that are so well suited to wine growing. But what is a climat? A climat is a specific terroir that offers a subtle balance between aspect, varietal, slope, altitude, and soil type. Each climat has its own identity that is expressed through the grapes that grow there. Vaux, Val, Mont, Côte. One just needs to read the wine labels to see that the local geography is often behind the names of the climat. On the left bank, in little valleys perpendicular to the Serein, some 24 climats are located, mostly facing east or southeast. The most famous of them are Vaillon and Montmain. But there are also Forêt, Bouteaux, Les Beauregards, Bourrois, Côte de l'Éché, Vaux-de-Vey, one of the most steeply sloping climats, Vaux-Lignon, and Vosgon. On the right bank, there are 16 Chablis Premier Cru climats, the most famous of which are Fourchaume, Mont-de-Milieu, and Montée de Tonnerre. Other less well-known Premier Cru climats include Les Fourneaux and Vaucoupin. And lastly, on a slope below the village of Chablis, the Chablis Grand Cru appellation is grown on 7 climats, with, from east to west, Blanchot, Les Clos, Valmur, Grenouille, Vaudésir, Preuze, and lastly, Bougros. In all, almost 100 hectares enjoy this exceptional location. Today, this little wine-growing region produces around 40 million bottles, of which almost 2/3 are exported. Each climat provides white wines of great purity. And as you explore the footpaths that wind their way through the vineyards, you too will understand what makes Chablis wines so elegant, rich, and diverse.
I think they did a fantastic job communicating what goes into Chablis and really leaves everything else out to keep it very focused on place. And when you buy Chablis, it can get a little confusing because you have all these different names, and all the names mean are the different hill or side or slope or mountain, and it's just these very exacting vineyard holdings, and families have all this land is spoken for, and they hold on to their Chablis holdings like treasure. The brand that we're tasting, Sigouinot Bordet, is a big long-term producer that is been making Chablis wine since the 1500s, and they have considerable holdings, and they are able to produce really tremendous value here for maybe $10 less than some of the newer, more modern producers. And so this is a really good value proposition from a very good vintage 2019. Now, in tougher vintages, they struggle with some of the things that happen. You know, you get into 2021, they had bud break, little flowers starting to appear, and then incredible challenges with frost and hail and all types of conditions. So you will have vintage variation. Sometimes the vintages get devastated, sometimes they get affected. And an affected vintage doesn't mean that the wine won't be good, it just means there won't be very much supply, which is ultimately when they start taking price up. And in 2021, you're going to hear a lot of the wine world, and we're probably hearing it right now, and how we're impacted by the frosts, the fires, and everything that's happened around the world. We had frost in New Zealand take out the 2021. We had Napa Valley 2020 fires, and we had Champagne and Loire Valley, Sancerre, and Chablis get pretty much destroyed by frosts of 2021. So wine supply is basically going to be questioned here and challenged, and we probably will all discover new wines of new appellations like China and India having a really big opportunity with us not having enough wine in the world. So these slopes are really interesting. You can see the white soils from the limestone, and the wines of Chablis are typically made with little or no oak. If there is wood, it is old wood, and old wood passes on almost no oak flavor, just a little oxidation. And this place is very much into their ecosystem because the wine is all about place. So you're seeing a huge kind of return to the days of old, and they have these amazingly big, beautiful beast-like horses called Percherons. I think that's what they're called. They're just enormous, and they pull these sleds, these plows, and they do all kinds of natural treatments to keep earth in balance there. Here we're looking at press, getting the destemmed fruit, or potentially you could even put in the fruit with stems, but it looks like here it's destemmed. And that is one of the wines from Chablis. One of the wines that we're going to taste tonight is from Burgundy, just a little bit further south. we're going with Philippe Collin in our collection of wines. And this is not from the Chablisian soils, but a little bit further south. He tends to be a Côte d'Or guy, and I've had the pleasure of having him appear on a Zoom in the past, and he is a man of very few words, but we had a nice visit, and it's always great to taste his wines. They are true to his family's name and from his family's estates, which are really in optimal locations, and all hand farmed, hand picked. And Burgundy is all about the quality story. This wine, French oak barrels, of course. You're never going to see anything else in France. 25% of it new. There are different shapes being used in different sizes. That would be the only caveat to the 25% new. They own quite a good amount of Premier Cru fruit, and they use it in all of their wines, and they blend it down. It's called repli, when they take their best fruit and they blend it down, rappelling down the hill of quality. And the vines are farmed sustainably. La Lutte Raisin. Less chemicals, less often, less aggressively than conventional growers. And this is actually an organization. They've got a little marcation on the bottle, and some vintners even strive to achieve levels of sustainability and biodynamics and bio safe type of designations. Final wine I'll talk about here quickly before we start to reveal, and I do see some questions and comments, which I'll get to, is the property known as Glenelly in Stellenbosch. This is again, Southern Hemisphere, but really a special terroir. Years ago, I got to go to South Africa and travel the land. I was just stunned at how raw South Africa is and how vast and how resource rich it is. You've got a lot of population around Cape Town. You've got almost no population throughout the countrysides. You have small shanty villages where there's a lot of economical challenges for the population. This is a country that was repressed and punished, punitively punished by their governmental systems, and it's just an amazing country that has a lot of forces that are at work, and the wine industry is trying to be a creator of good and helping produce jobs, fair labor, fair wages, elevate families, and it's turning into a very good system for South Africa to improve the entire population and not just a part of the population. And so that's always interesting. Glenelly comes from some noble background. They found this vineyard right below the beautiful mountains in South Africa, just optimally set up. It's just dramatic as you stand in the vineyards and you see the ocean in the horizon, and it's got this rugged, raw, like, the stuff of movie sets, and it's really a special spot. And they found this vineyard holding, and this woman used to own a very famous Bordeaux house, and she sold her Bordeaux house and moved to Stellenbosch, and Pichon-Lalande was the name of the Bordeaux house. and she took her ideals, her financial power, was able to capitalize on buying one of the most amazing vineyard locations and setting up Glenelly. And when you list out the classic brands of South Africa and you talk to the different winemakers and you ask them what are the best brands inside the world of Chardonnay, Glenelly is a kind of a national treasure. So that's going to be one of the wines that we're tasting tonight. All right. Hopefully you've made it through a few of them and you might have a few comments. I'm going to quickly taste the 5 wines and give you some feedback, and I welcome all comments at this time. Take your microphone off of mute and participate with me. I need a dump bucket. Luckily, I own a bunch of them. All right. So, number 1 was very clean, tight, mineral, focused, salt air, clean, unoaked, pure.
Hey, Chablis.
Chablis. That's right. Number 2, a little bit of the beautiful fatness and richness that you would get in the hillsides and the slopes of Burgundy is the Philippe Cologne, and you can smell it. It's got a little bit more use of wood and batonnage. You can smell that yeast, lees stirring in the wine. It's creamy, yet wonderfully clean, and great acidity, great balance. I will say I think this might be the best wine price value on our entire website with the reputation of this brand. This wine's selling for less than $30 a bottle, and it's really hard to get a Bourgogne with a brand name like this with great value and a great vintage. 18's a wonderful vintage, and it's drinking spectacular. By the way, the Chablis probably only gets better for the next 5 years. This Burgundy too, this white Burgundy as well. These things age like titans, and in fact probably on release are a little too young, and they just find their spot a couple of years in. So here we are a couple of years in, and they're optimal right now in the beginning of 2022, and probably for the next 5 years will continue to improve.
Number 3.
Number 3. Any comments on number 3?
It was a very interesting, wild, almost a mountainous, wild flavor to it. That I was guessing, just because of the kind of mountainous flavor I got from it, that it might be Patagonia. Because Patagonia is, up there in that elevation. But I haven't had enough Patagonian, nor have I had enough South Africans.
There you go. And this is the South African, sitting right below the mountains there, just in this beautiful spot. Wonderful detail here. A little bit more sun ripe than the Burgundian wine, but really nice tension. And another, all wines of South Africa represent tremendous value. This is a wine that sells for around $20, and has, accolades of being in the top wines of South Africa. Good score. Really, I think I could pour this for anyone that likes California Chardonnay, and they would find some pleasure here. And if I had a little restaurant in, here in California, and was looking for something that I could afford to pour at a nice price point, and kind of surprise people, this would be a really fun wine to be able to do that with.
Ian, can you remind us of the oak treatment on this one?
Yeah, I'm recollecting, and what I'll do is I'll just pull that open just so I can see on, I'm not even sure I covered that. I'm sorry. Brianna, how are you doing?
Very good.
So let me just pull the website for people to see here. What's if you clicked on the Zoom into Wine and you found the wine on that page, not only do we take the time to show past videos that the wine was featured in, but the technical data that we have. I'm not seeing exact use here. I apologize. Usually we have that when they give it to us. Just some comments here, but I do know that this is French oak because she's French, and may even use a little bit of Russian or Slovenian wood down there because it's more.
I thought you were on.
available.
I thought you just were out talking.
Oh, Terrence, I heard you on there.
Sorry, Ian.
No problem. So we've got probably 20 to 25% use of French oak or oak that is very similar to French oak because that's what she's going to demand. And knowing that their price point is going to be challenging, that would be the only reason they would even divert from French oak. But Slovenian wood and some Russian wood might be a little bit more easily obtained at a much lower price point for the South African winemaking market, which does suffer from very weak currency, and they're on the rand, and the rand dollar has been just absolutely getting spanked. So these wines just continue to get cheaper for us here in America, but they have a harder and harder time monetizing with the cost inputs. So oak barrel, 12 months, and a little bit of batonnage is my recollection of what's happening on this bottle of wine. Batonnage, something I've said a couple of times. If anybody has a question about what I'm talking about, they literally stick a little wand into the wood barrel and stir the lees back into the wine to give it coax some richness into the wine. The lees, the dead yeast cells, are down there, and some of the solids in the wine. And by stirring it, you can actually pick up a little bit more roundness in the wine. It really is something you can detect, so that you can pick up a glass of wine and look the winemaker straight in the face and say, how much batonnage, because you can actually smell that yeast and that roundness and that sense of it's not quite autolysis, but there is that extended contact with the lees and the yeast that give you that nose quality and that mouth quality. Okay, so that was wine number 3. Make sure I got my price in there. $19.95. That's right. Wine number 1 was the $25.95.
Ian,
Yes,
it
ma'am.
looks like I looked it up since she was asking. It says it's spontaneous fermentation in
Okay.
stainless steel tanks, malolactic in French oak barrels, and matured for 12 months.
That's about right.
Yep.
Yep.
$20 a steal, man.
It's a steal, right?
Yeah.
So tasty. Yeah, I love turning people onto this wine, and unfortunately, you know who I sell most of it to? South Africans. They see I got it, they're like, "Hey, you got the Glenelly." They're all on it. So, yeah, that's a great $20 find. All right, wine number 4 is from Patagonia. This is the wine that I went into some detail about. Jean-Marc Rouleau being quite a collectible name in the white wine world. Piero and Chiza's family with Sassicaia, big red wine producer, $200+ bottles of red wine. They got together with their efforts and energies And I will share too, this is a brand I'm really bullish on because it's still kind of new. You know, if Rouleau was new right now and I was able to buy some, I would, because you want to establish a pattern of buying these wines early in the brand's life so that next year they come back and say, okay, last year you bought a couple of cases, we can give you a couple of cases this year. This brand will be established like that. And so I've got the Pinot and I've got 2 of the Chardonnays, and these are basically all that I could find and make available. One of the Chardonnays at the $100 price point got the 97 score. This is from the older block. And then this, the one that we're tasting today, is the 90.4 point score at around $50. And this Pinot was one of my favorite finds of last year. And I don't just say that lightly. It is truly fantastic. Fantastic. I could drink a lot of this Pinot Noir. It's got such charm and poise and delicacy. It has kind of the body and temperament of a Beaujolais, but with in restraint, but with a little bit more ripeness and richness. And there's just this little attitude that goes on that just makes me go, oh yeah, my tongue just kind of makes me want to continue just to let it sit in there, and really a pleasurable, fun, fresh, stimulating little Pinot Noir that doesn't hit you over the head with oak and power. It's only got like 13% alcohol. Really fun.
Ian, would you say there's any like generalizations to be made about wine in Patagonia, or you know how they're making it or what they're doing down there?
Because it's such a revolution, basically. I know that there's been a few Patagonian brands for a while, but it's kind of the Wild West down there. It's a little bit like, okay, let's create the reputation. I think they're in that formidable moment right now. And if this brand didn't exist, I don't know if we'd be talking about Patagonia. So I do think that there are some regrettable brands that are down there that have made wine that maybe offer some people like this, say, hey, if we actually came down there, we might be able to turn this pretty decent fruit into something a little prettier. And I think that's what happened here. Not to be snobby about it or anything, but when you have the resources of a Sassicaia and a Jean-Marc Rouleau, you can take somebody else's efforts and probably take them up 10 notches,
Mm-hmm.
That's I think where we're at in that curve. And I really don't know that Patagonia is going to be a huge wine producer anytime soon. I'm certainly, the ecosystem down there is just optimal for having biodiversity, but you want to keep biodiversity too. And sometimes vineyards can create a monoculture.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what the future is, but when the project has this type of promise and passion and quite honestly pocketbook, the product can be very, very good. I hope you guys enjoyed number 4. I want to taste
Ian,
it.
quick question for you.
Yeah.
On the Patagonia, are they using Portuguese cork in their wines?
I'm pretty sure that most people do. I don't have the original corks in these bottles to be able to pull it out and show you, because I'm tasting from bottles that I had blinded, and I always pull a different cork and put it in there.
The last thing I want to say about Patagonia is I've had some, this is the first time I've ever had Patagonia and Chardonnay, but I have some brilliant Malbecs from Patagonia.
Yeah.
And various price ranges from, $35, $40 to $100. And they do a wonderful job with Malbec.
Well,
So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. I have tasted some really good stuff from down there, but it isn't their first game. There's certainly other industry that Patagonia and tourism and natural tourism is certainly a very big driver for Patagonia, and preservation and wildlife, a very important part of their world. And that's what he wants to do, is really come in and protect the ecosystem. He owns a very large piece of land with very few acres planted. So he's able to keep the vineyard and the property in balance and not have his neighbor impact his vineyard production. So it was a very sizable investment, but it was also at a time in history in 2004 where you got a lot of land for your dollar. Now, from a wine standpoint, like I said, the nose is really restrained. Alcohol here says 13.5. And not having many references for Patagonian minerality, you could almost tell though that a Burgundian made this wine with the way the fruit and the minerality kind of line up and balance each other. I don't think this wine has any batonnage. I think it may have sat on lees for a little while, but there's none of that roundness and richness being afforded here. It's really very focused, it's subtle, and if you let the wine just sit in your palate for a minute, it continues to kind of give, and it's quite prolonged. It's not a loud wine, it's not a big vocal wine, but it's very persistent, and that comes with quality and focus and detail. And so the wine has this real charm about it. It may not be your style if you're into more California ripe and round and bigger in your palate type of an experience. This is all about less is more. And I think it takes a little bit of time to get warmed up to this wine, but once you like it, if you like it, I think quite charming. And I think this is the type of wine that I prefer, because it kind of keeps bringing me back, saying, what is that? What's going on here? Let me taste, let me smell, let me figure this out. It's very intriguing to me, and I think it's quite interesting, intellectual, and made by some really important folks. So I'm quite under its spell. And when you smell that the use of wood here is so subtle. And it's not that, it doesn't have that super fragrant, ripe, bruised apple or anything. It's just so clean and so tender. The acidity is really what this wine, I think, is showing you. Has very good acidity, but it doesn't come off and like make you go, wow, something like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc where you're like, ooh, man, the lemonade shock factor. This is just really tender, delicate, subtle, pretty. Wine 5, our friends at Hyde de Villaine. Huge score. Let's see what they say there. Opulent aromas of cooked apple, lemon rind, light praline, and stone. Full-bodied with linear and lively acidity that runs through the wine. Energetic and bright with tightness and structure. Steely. Drink now, better in 2023.
I think I like the expression by Suckling compared to Wine Spectator. I'm getting more of the Suckling flavor profile compared to Wine Spectator.
there's so much quality here. You can really take, there's fruit that's grown for volume that can achieve the cook apple, but to have it so tightly wound with that lemon rind and those little other aspects here, I think it has wonderful tension, acidity, but with a much bigger voice. And there are volume knobs in wine, and you can find Chardonnays that are much more ripe and bold and creamy and buttery and oaky, and some people, that's what they want. They want that full experience, because that's what satisfies their palate. This wine, I think, will make them happy, but it's an expensive bottle of wine. And I think that you don't have to spend $75 to get this type of quality, this type of big and bold. But this doesn't have kind of that, maybe enough vanilla and enough creaminess that I would recommend this to someone who wants that experience. This is a much more of a pretty elegant side, a more detailed side. This is a refined wine with really beautiful poise, and the pendulum here doesn't swing that wide. It's just very narrow, and it's telling you about this one vineyard that they're sourcing their fruit from, with these singular qualities and this pristine fruit presentation and incredible winemaking, because they are very proud at this place of the detail. And this is not a winery that you go to see the opulence of Napa Valley. It's very much a hard-working vineyard, very much like a place in Burgundy where it's barrels and some dark cavey type of a location, and nothing much else.
What is the alcohol content of this wine?
13.6. 13.6.
Boy, it was so French style. I'm not surprised it's 13.6.
Yeah, and I think if you visit the winery, and I'm not sure who the winemaker is today, but they have already spun off 2 or 3 winemakers from this venue that have risen to, and as you see this tasting note, you don't see a winemaker being promoted here. I think in the early days of this brand, a couple of winemakers did get promoted through here, and as soon as they got their name out there as the winemaker of HDV, they were off on their own. And so this brand is not promoting the maker of the wine, but the philosophy of the wine more than that, because they want to, you don't know who the winemaker is at Domaine Romanoconti either. They're all about, promoting the qualities of the brand and getting you to trust the brand, not the maker. And so this is the family story that they've put in the investment here. And then they come from Burgundian roots, so they want to have that kind of through line. They don't want to be like, oh, High de Villain's making one type of wine in Burgundy and this crazy ripe California style in California. They're going to be fairly Burgundian about it.
It's an interesting point you made, Ian, about the winemaker in the background, because you take a great Cabernet house in Washington, Cosita Creek, and when their winemaker and his whole crew walk, that sends shockwaves to the purchasing community of Cosita Creek buyers.
Yeah.
And it's so recent that I read about it. It's like, wow, how's that going to change?
What Terrence is referring to is recently the entire winemaking team left a winery right before harvest. And I have a feeling it wasn't because they just left because they felt like it, but there was something else going on there. But that's a pretty brutal thing to do. and probably limits who would hire you again. Yeah, I don't care how bad it was. You got to make it through that day. You know, it's like there's a pretty famous chef friend of mine who here in LA left his restaurant job on the day before Thanksgiving, and I don't think anybody's wanted to hire him since. So,
Well, coming from the restaurant industry, I always told owners, you better know how to cook everything in that kitchen, because if the chef walks on you, you don't know how to cook it, you're screwed.
well, yep, that's if you're a small house, you got to have all those skills for sure. Melvin, did you and your wife enjoy the wines?
Very much, although we were having differences of opinions on which ones we liked the best.
Uh-oh.
But she was crazy over the number 3, which obviously is a heck of a value, and frankly, generally a bit less than I'm used to paying. So that we're going to have to stock up on some of that.
Oh, that sounds like a win.
It does. It does. And the whole thing, but yep, it is, and it's good fun tonight. I'm glad that I was able to do this on a little time that was able to take off.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Sue Green, it's great to see you again. Hope you're doing all right. You're looking good in purple. Lisa Tess, thanks for joining us. Brian, how's things going for you and your wine hobbies and habits?
All is going well. People are still virtually tasting as we are here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Crystal, it's great to have you here tonight. Thanks for joining us. And Nancy and Tanya, Sarah, Dustin, thank you. And Cassie, thank you. I hope you guys
Thank you, Ian.
We love putting these little kits together and getting them out. We delivered them probably today, unless UPS sent them out to you in faraway places. I think someone was far away. I don't know who that was, but I'm very happy to be able to pull this together. Let me just make sure I got the chats addressed, because you guys got a little chatty. Sarah, thank you for the comments and the compliments. That was great. Appreciate it, Dustin. Thank you. Can you show a photo of the wine after the guess? Oh, I see. Did I do that? Did we do that? Did you guys get enough? If you don't remember, just take a look at the class, zoomintowine.com, and you can see the 5 wines. You can click right through to the site. Each of you that attended tonight get 10% off on any of the wines, 1 bottle, 2 bottle, whatever you want. And let me see. Well, yes, if there's any other questions, you know where to find me. But take a look at our Zoom into Wine calendar and note that next week we have a really fantastic cult wine tasting. And if you're into top Napa Valley Cabernet, go to zoomintowine.com. You'll see our cult wine tasting. We are tasting some bombers.
Oh my gosh.
Realm, Hunter Pointer, Insignia, Continuum, Polito Walker, Castile, which is a new one, and O'Shaughnessy. And we're going to put those all blind, and then we'll taste them, rate them, and then reveal them, and then we'll see which one you like. Some of these are in the going towards Pluto in price, but it's really fun to taste that way and to be able to taste some of these wines that you read about, hear about, but seldom see, because each one of those are pretty limited. That's our cult wine tasting. We have a couple of wine, cheese, and chocolate activities around Valentine's. We put a little special something together for the Valentine's period, and it's quite fun. We do it on Saturday and on Monday, Valentine's Day, if you want to join me. Those will not be on the Zoom into Wine cast. Those will be private sessions. But our big event for the month is the Stars of the Rhone Valley. And every once in a while, I like to put together something that's really helps me extend my passion for wine. This time I got my good friend up in Santa Barbara wine country, Michael Larner, owner of Larner Vineyards. He's also a soil scientist, And he also worked for Guy Gall in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So he knows his way around the Rhone Valley very well. I've been interviewing the proprietors. We've got 2, 3, 5-minute videos with each of the producers, and then their importer live on the Zoom. Chêne Bleu, a brand you absolutely want to find out about. Langrelot, one of the classic Crozet Hermitage producers. Lionel Ferry, epic producer of Old Vine Saint-Joseph. We'll go to Vaccarat, drink the Grenache with the winemaker, Serge and his family. I'm going to be Zooming with them on Monday and learning all about Sang de Caillou, which has always been one of my favorites, the Blood of Stones. The Vaccarat 100% Grenache, just spectacular. This morning I Zoomed with Isabelle Sabon, winemaker at Genasse, Domaine de la Genasse, Châteauneuf-du-Pape. We're drinking the 98-point Vieillevin Old Vines. And last but not least, Jean-Louis Chave, representing Hermitage in the Rhone. And we'll have David Shivrick. He's a wine legend on the Zoom with us as well. And you can do the tasting kit right now until the 5th for less than $50. That is an insane lineup, and these wines are pricier, but that's going to be a really, really fun showcase on the Rhone Valley. Super educational. If you like Grenache and Syrah, old world style, or even if you don't, or you just want to know about them, this is where you're going to come, because that is just an incredible lineup of wines to be able to learn about. They are considered benchmarks in the Rhone Valley, and that's what is exciting me at this moment. So I look forward to hopefully seeing many of you there, and I thank you for your support of tonight. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.